Welcome to Mark My Words, a show that searches for the fork in the road in life, the place where the turning point in the journey of entrepreneurship and life can be found. Let's meet each other at the crossroads on Mark My Words. This episode is sponsored by GrowX Labs. Quick question. When you're leading a team or growing a business, who helps you think clearly? GrowX Labs offers executive decision support, real-time access to a trusted strategist who helps you navigate tough calls, leadership blind spots, and everything in between. No fluff, no long-term commitment, just fast, honest insight from someone who gets it. If you're a founder or exec and need a sounding board, go to growxlabs.com/mark. That's grwxlabs.com/mark and book a discovery call today. So one thing that I do when I'm thinking about Mark My Words, this show that I've been doing for 6 years, and when I'm just alone, reflecting, thinking about all the guests, the variety of guests from all different walks of life, I think about how proud I am at the diversity of the show and just the fact that I have not limited myself or boxed myself into a particular political affiliation or thinking, way of thinking, or, you can fill in the blank. I have left this really open, and I feel like that's a really big reflection of me. And as I've said countless times doing this show over the years, I really enjoy when I can get a message in my inbox from somebody who is bringing something that I haven't heard of, or they're doing something just completely different. And I like to think that each guest I've had is bringing something different, even if they're talking about a topic or doing something in the world that maybe I've already addressed on this show. But I definitely think that my guest today, David Deighton, is bringing something a little different to the table than what I've had on this show. David is the creator of Triptych Dialogue, an art experiment in bridging societal divides by redefining how we talk to one another. And I'll let him fill in the blanks for sure, but he is an artist, an anonymous artist, and he might still be anonymous in his own way, but he's not anonymous today because he's here with us, and he is here to talk about how he's getting out on the street. He's taking it to the streets, just like the Doobie Brothers, or maybe not quite that way, but he's taking it to the streets. And I feel like David's work sits at a really fascinating intersection of art, dialogue, and social healing. And on this show, we talk a lot about crossroads reinvention, building something from conviction, and I feel like we're going to get a real mishmash of all of this, plus more. David, welcome to Mark My Words. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. What an introduction. Thank you. I feel like an outlier, although my view and filter is very much in the center as far as I'm concerned. But I heard that quite a bit, even from my wife. says that, I'm out of the box a lot. Um, so
Well,
I'm
you've
okay
come to
with
the
that.
right place. You've come
Right
to the
on.
right place. I feel like I'm a bit out of the box with my thinking as well on a lot of things. Probably not on the same level as you, but hey, we're not really here to measure or compare. We're here to have a hopefully interesting and fun conversation. And I am going to get this started. I mean, you're an artist, and we had a great conversation even before we started about things to do with art, especially the records behind me. Have you always felt that spark for art? Is that something that you just knew you wanted to be involved with growing up?
Yeah, it is interesting. I never quite thought of myself as an artist, but people in my family would say, he's the poet, David, he's such an artist. And I always thought it was a bit of an insult, a little bit like, what do you mean? There's like, I don't know anybody else that's a poet or an artist around me. Why all of a sudden I'm that person? But with time and the things that that I found appealing, I found, oh, there's similarities. I find them in museums or the street performer or the spray painting in some graffiti or some art installation. And often I didn't quite understand why that would connect with me as a child. And I knew one thing. I knew that artists made no money and that they lived they always were hungry going from one meal to the other. Um, and but that's yeah, quite early on. You know what I did? I fought back against my impulse to create or to experiment and tried to be as straight as possible. When I went to college, I thought, okay, yeah, I'm going to learn to play tennis. Yeah, yeah, that's a good business thing to do. I'm going to do tennis. I'm going to learn golf too. I don't like golf, but golf is something that you do in business. So I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn golf and do this and do that and and it didn't really appeal to me very much. Sorry for all the golfers out there. It didn't work for me, and I found myself just going back and painting and drawing and doing all these other things, and I made a career out of it. And maybe from a back way, if you like, from collecting. That's what we were talking about before about the records, right? I really enjoyed. I enjoy international relations and the connections between countries and how that manifests itself. I love borders as well. Not that I think they should exist, but why do they exist and where they go and all these things. So I started collecting antique maps and then eventually turned that into a business where I was selling antique maps, would turn into antique prints, like botanicals and manuscripts, and then that went into original artwork on paper, and then it just went out of proportion into a very large, one of the largest of its kind, I was told, of artwork, original antiquarian artwork on paper. So I was surrounded by that. Loved the history and connection behind the pieces, and included my own artwork within the collection, which was interesting. The stuff was going back like 500 years, but most of the things that I was selling were from dead people. And if you want to get something modern and contemporary, well, I couldn't always afford it, could I? So I put my own artwork in there, and I'd sell. And my wife and I, uh, that artwork still goes through that business. So that's quite interesting. How your hobbies can take you into a space where you can I was about to say monetize. That doesn't feel good, but turn it into something that you can make a living from. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even artists need a way to make money, and I really like just the whole unconventional style of your life because I feel like I'm almost like corporate unconventional because I work in television as my day job, but like that's obviously very unconventional and definitely not like a normal life, especially with the way my career is going, thanks largely to technology as well. So I can definitely relate to just like how like I don't know how to explain it, but I am not somebody who should be doing like a conventional job myself, even though you could argue that my life is a little bit conventional, especially career wise, but I could never. I found out soon enough I could never be in a trade. Like I could never be a plumber. I could never wear a suit and go to the office and be in meetings and be like, here are the numbers. Like it's just not my personality. So I love, as I can't even talk here. I love that you found a way to turn your passion into a business, both uh, literally just with your work and just as a collector. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, well, it seems like one thing. So sometimes my English, I'm French, so English is my second language. Just to say, so sometimes I'm searching for words, just so your listeners get a get a understand why David is also searching for his words. But yeah, some things just come very naturally. I believe very much in a flow, and I go with it. It doesn't mean I'm making, even if I don't really care much about the money. I've lived in my car before, and it didn't quite bother me. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. I'm location independent, and I'm moving around, and I guess I was lucky enough to have a car to live in at that point. And I've lived in several vehicles. So I just kind of go with the flow. And when things go well, it doesn't mean I go spend all the money, but just as long as it's something that is appealing to me, um, and I have that. I guess I have that luxury to be able to follow a bliss, if you want, to follow this flow, not to go against it. I very much see life as a river going from its origins in the clouds down onto the mountain, going down to the sea, and having a great recycling effect. I'm somewhere down the river. I'm trying not to swim upstream, but I'm enjoying all the different variations in that river, and they take me to different places. Um, yeah, yeah. And one thing I do for the artwork, I don't just so don't think all I do is the collection turning into a business. Is I spend now most of my time dedicated to what you probably wanted to ask me next is about talking to strangers and doing art installations in public spaces where there's absolutely no money to be made.
Well,
Uh,
you're close.
mm.
We can definitely go there. I'll tie it in with uh first of all, I admire living in a vehicle. You're definitely on another level of unconventional than me. You certainly got me beat there. Again, not that we're measuring here, but um I do want to tie in what you just said because that's really important. Uh, where did like the itch to travel come into play?
Mm.
Was it just because of your lifestyle? Was it just something you wanted to do anyway?
Oh, that's a really good question, Mark. Yeah, I was born in the United States, raised in France, and spent my childhood between two divorced parents. So I've always spent a lot of time in airports, and I actually quite enjoy it. Even if there's long waits and stuff, there's tons of people there, and it's a very unusual space to be in because it's not one where people really want to talk to one another. It's very much like being in a very big elevator. you know, Everybody's just waiting to get to the next floor. But I do find that a very very interesting space to be in, and I've traveled, I don't know, to over 80 countries. I love, and I go back to the same ones these days. I like where I walk and I wander from dawn to dusk, maybe in a city or out in the desert, or most recently in the mountains of Morocco. and I find a lot of solace in those spaces to think and to reflect. Um, and so, yeah, traveling is definitely in my core. I've never really spent much time in one place. I think I used to not. I used to say that um, I traveled because I didn't have to get my mail, and I felt free not getting my mail and the bills. But now it follows you everywhere if you have your phone with you with the digital devices. So there's no escaping that. Um, but it's the encounters. It's the encounters with strangers, people that you don't know. There's a humanity that I find, regardless of which countries I go to, where you can have an intimate moment with a stranger where you're really connecting, and yeah, because they're not going to see you again, you're not going to see them, and people open up quite a lot, really. If if you talk more than about the weather, if you talk about something maybe more philosophical or deep meaning, uh, and that it's liberating. I love that part of travel.
Well,
Yeah.
now I'm going to free you a little bit because you were about to launch into, I think, what you really want to get into next, which is why you kind of you came out from being so anonymous and you wanted to get out there and talk to people and really engage them, because not that this show is a political show, and I've prided myself in like keeping that whole thing kind of like down the middle, but we're gonna talk about this as much as we can, at least. And I want to let you loose now and have you tell your story of just what inspired you to get out there with the Triptych Dialogue project and talk to people about just the climate that we're living in today, because people may not know this about me, but my minor in college was actually political science, and yet
All right.
I yeah, and yet I've never spoken about politics not one time on this show. So, uh, yeah, go ahead, David. Let's hear.
Yeah. Well, first of all, the interesting thing is that I won't be talking about political facts or opinions. Um, to me, what fascinates me about politics, and by the way, I also have a degree in political science. I find that really cool that
Oh
we
my
have that in
gosh,
common. Yeah, and I went into selling antiques, and you got records and work and TV. But it does have its applications. I still use it today. In a sense, it's about the political spectrum, if you like, or where people are on the left or on the right, and how people define themselves. Like I'm a Republican or a Democrat, or I'm in the center, or I'm not interested, I don't vote, and all these things. And Yeah, it's always fascinated me how detached some people may be from the election cycles. They don't go out and vote. They don't want to get involved. They think it doesn't have any effect upon them, although it does. Still can't avoid paying taxes at the pump, or buying foods and sales tax, and where you live and what type of living you're in. Your environment that you decided to live in is kind of a political act as well. And I've for years have made political art, but that wasn't. It was kind of a personal journey, and people would buy my paintings or not. It didn't matter much to me. What As long as people were buying it.
fair
But
enough.
yeah, in the I have a daughter, and she's 14, and I have much more of a concern of what her future looks like. And I can see from living in the U.S. That a lot of people are no longer talking to each other on certain subjects, or they'll cut people off entirely, family members, friends, coworkers, because of the political affiliation that they might have. And yeah, and it's about those boxes we were talking about. People put each other in a box, and they're not really willing to exit the box and go look in the other box. And the walls are getting higher and higher, and It's a hell of a construct. We're in boxes that include like-minded people, right? I think we could all agree on that. Even when we're on our digital devices, we all want to, we it feeds us stuff that we want to see. That makes us, gives us some rage and excitement or whatever, or entertains us. And that I find that scary. Uh, the outcome is fewer and fewer people exchanging with one another and exchanging ideas. And as an artist, to me, that's super important that we exchange ideas regularly. But how do you do that? And people are afraid, for example, on a subject of politics, even talking about it, because they know they're going to get in an argument or confrontation. So that's what I wanted to deal with. Like, okay, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to go in person, talk to strangers, and ask them political questions, and and see what happens. And I found that so that's what I've been doing in different last 6 7 years of just asking people questions, setting up art installations that ask people to think about why they don't talk about politics or how to talk politics with other people without getting in an argument. And in a nutshell, my findings are that, if you listen, if you deeply listen, actively listen, and just let the other person say what they have to say, you're doing like an act of civility, an act of kindness, so that they can get it out. Because most of us don't have a chance to say these things that seem to be locked in, right? We get a lot of stuff online, and we're consuming it, but we don't get to digest it, and we don't get to bring it out again. So doing it in person, people have found that very, very helpful to have somebody finally listen to them. And what I found afterwards is that people have told me, you know what, I love what you're doing. I had no idea where I was going with this. It was just an experiment. Um, People have been saying, oh, you know what, I'm going to do the same with my uncle or my cousin or this coworker. I was like, wow, that's fantastic. That's great. I never hoped that much, right? People are now going to try what I'm doing and try it with others. Listen in, ask questions, and talk about a subject you're not supposed to, and just not trying to trap anyone in your questions. They're very open ended questions, uh, and show that we can have civility in our dialogue and discourse. If we just show the example, we all know what it is. We just don't want to do it, and so someone's just got to make that step. Like you have a podcast, for example. You made that step. You looking for guests and talking to them and exchanging with lots of different ideas. And that whole concept of the box is really central to my work. This is what it is in a nutshell: is how do you exit your box, right? And go visit somebody else's box. And where's the intersection of those two things happening? I mean, is the box completely closed? Nobody's going to let you in? Is there an area that's soft that might be able to allow some space for some back and forth? And how big is the box? That I explore that one quite a lot, which is quite fun. Do we live in a little tiny box of perception, or is it very large? Or we think it's large and it's actually quite small. you
Well,
know, and I found that really super interesting. Yeah.
I think that the environment that I try to create for this show, and I think a lot of what you're trying to do out there on the streets is something that needs to happen more as far as like just listening, because I feel that one of the best sources of feedback that I've gotten about doing this show is that people have said you're not a host who will like interrupt me when I'm talking or doesn't try to like make the episode about you. And that's not really even something that I plan to do. I think that's just who I am. And I personally have lived a life where I felt like I just wasn't really like heard a whole lot. Didn't feel like people would want to like listen or hear what I have to say. I feel like this is that one platform for me where not only can I give that to the guests and hopefully to the audience, but I can give myself the platform to actually like say some things I may not get to say or be heard about otherwise. And I feel like listening to people is very underrated. And I feel like the fact that this show has gone on as long as it has, it's not because I have tons of charisma. I'm not like oozing charisma or, good looks or anything like that. I'm not like some dynamic personality, but I think that one of the things that helps me is that I listen, and I hope that that's something that is picked up on. And I think we all need to do a little more of that because I can even like kind of, you can say, because you look like you want to say something, but do you think that the pace of our lives these days is a reason why people aren't listening enough, whether it's political or just, you know, trolls on social media or whatever it might be? What do you think?
So, first, I think that's something else we share, right? The of trying to be heard, we have to listen, which is odd, right? But when we listen in, we show our humanity and the civility, and you create trust, which is super important, right? I'm always blown away that in a couple of minutes, with this stranger, we're just looking out in toward. I do this often in national parks, so we're looking out at the view together, and they're getting deep. They're getting deep, and sometimes there's people that cry. Like it's been such a long time that they haven't been able to get anything like this out that they cry, and it gets awkward when the husband comes over and says, "What did you say to my wife?" And I, no, 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 I'm just listening. You know, these things happen, but it's yeah, it's an important it's an important moment. I think that, but it's painful. I think there's an element of pain um, when you put yourself forward to be this sponge and to listen in. Somebody's got to do it, but I think it takes. Then I'm kind of talking to myself here, but I'm giving it to you, like the courage to do so, right? To go through the pains of the mechanics of listening to another, and not putting oneself forward. I mean, that there's a lot of humility in that. No, I'm saying this for you, but in reflection back to me, there's my ego going, "Yay!" But I think like you said, it was underrated, and I think those are values that we should work with, and we should practice. We need to practice because it's not easy. I mean, I get triggered. Um, by some of the things people say, things that I disagree with or that upset me, uh, and that's not part of my project. Well, it is part of my project to try to understand why I'm getting triggered, or what it is to be triggered, or how to get back to focus on the person you're talking to, or talking with. Yeah, that's the triggers are important, and from that praise I'm giving ourselves here, I forgot what your question was.
I might have forgotten what my question was, and too
Oh,
bad
cool.
we can't even rewind this. Technology has not evolved to that point since this is basically a live shot here. But if it comes back to me, I will go back
Yeah,
to
we'll
it.
get back to it.
What I can ask, coming off of all of that, is, and this is something that I've been wondering myself. At least my understanding is that the end goal is to do something good and positive and to try to bridge those gaps that we have in society, just not seeing eye to eye and disagreeing. What for you is just like the end goal of the project? Is there something that you want to do? Is it like a book? Is it a documentary? Is it neither of those things? Is
Uh,
it through your art?
uh, there's so many things. Um, but I don't have like an end goal. I just think, oh, I want to experiment with this. Yeah, us always on the same theme. So there's creating, like recently I started making ceramic vessels and putting political messages in them and burying them on out in the desert, so maybe somebody will find it in a couple hundred years or whatever and wonder, oh, what's this about democracy? Does it even exist? Or ask themselves questions in the future, like taking it out of the timeline of my own existence. Looking at some new art installations back to some national parks. I also see going on these podcasts is very much part of that as well. There's a lot of creation that goes on here, a lot of ideas going back and forth. It's beautiful. It's about the public in a new way. The people that are listening. I mean, it's amazing. This is about listening. We're all talking about people don't listen or use. People that are listening now are practicing their listening skills right now. How do you apply that when you have something to say? For example, there's a story that's creating itself in today's interaction between us. The listeners can take that story and say, you know what, I heard on Mark's show you had a guest and they were talking about listening, and I was listening. and, but it's interesting how we don't listen to each other anymore, and then we ask a question and listen to what the other person has to say, and then we have a dialogue, a meaning. I think what I search for is that people have meaningful, deep conversations, like the ones I was describing as I'm traveling, the ones that you feel a deep sense of human connection, and you haven't just felt abandoned in the mass of humanity as just a little something, a little nothing. You feel that you're part of a much larger community, and that happens when you converse beyond the weather, yeah, and whatever the sports team or whatever did. If you talk about politics, if you talk about religion, if you talk about I don't know, something philosophical or ideas, but you have to ask the other person the questions. Otherwise, you're just putting more of yourself out there. And community is about absorbing also the others to become us, right? We. Yeah,
So,
that's what I'm aiming for. Yeah, and
so,
it's a
so
personal. It's for me. I'm saying, Mark,
yeah.
it's for me. It's very important for me, uh, and I'm glad it works for other people too. Yeah.
And that was something I was actually going to say next is that
Oh, cool.
doing mark my words when I could be having like a terrible day. I know that life for me has been a little like up and down, a lot going on in my life right now. And I've had some days going into an episode where I'm just not in the best place. But when I meet up with the guests and I have an episode that's awesome, like this one or so many others, it gives me a whole different energy for the rest of the day. And it
Mm.
makes like a huge difference. Do you find that going out there and doing the work that you're doing, 'cause I know as an artist, it's very like solopreneur. I hate to use preneur or anything entrepreneurial talking about being an artist, but it's a very like solitaire activity and you're not engaging with people usually very much, but then you're getting out, traveling, meeting people, having all these meaningful conversations, hopefully like I'm having on Mark My Words. Uh what does that do to your energy and how that makes you feel? What difference does that make in your world?
Yeah, yeah. It made a huge difference. I feel like I've been transformed because of it. I used to just, like you said, very much the solo artist, making whatever I wanted, and putting it out there. And when I had to found myself, I put myself in a place where the public and me were creating something together. Because in an art installation, there's no point in me just putting it there. There's no viewer, right, or anybody participating with it. So when that starts to happen, and then we start having conversations and we're talking and I engage with people, that right there is like the act of reaching out and receiving is beautiful. It really takes me out of doldrums or feeling low. Uh, it's not easy. That's why I spoke a little bit about pain before, for me, uh, because you have to put yourself in a place to be exposed, and we're not feeling too good. You don't really want to expose yourself. You want to protect yourself. But I found that actually the best move in that situation is for me to go expose myself and to expose myself to the benefit of another, not to try to push myself forward. And because in that case, the other person is going to deal with themselves and how they want to present themselves and all that, usually on their best behavior, you know. And then it doesn't take long before a connection starts to happen, and that just fills me. Yeah, it fills me with energy, a hope as well, because in a project like this you could think, it's it's about political polarization, and the country's getting pulled apart by these different political views, and nobody's talking to one another. But when you do get to talk to people, you realize that they do want to talk to one another. They're just kind of forgotten how, and they don't want to do it. They just need kind of an invitation to do so. That they do have hope for the future, and they do see that as citizens we can do some foundational work that regardless of the politicians or forces that be can't really influence us from stop us from doing this. It's kind of like an act of resistance. Somebody told me once. I think that's a bit strong. And for me, it was more of it could be an act of resistance depending how you see it. But it's a community effort, and it's bringing cohesion to a foundation that seems to be falling apart. But we have all the elements to keep it nice and strong. But we just have to get out there and do it, and we can do it at any time. That gets me going. That makes me want to continue more and try something else out. Like you were talking about book or whatever. But a book would be too isolating to me. I just want to get more there in the field, talk to hundreds of more people, uh, and experiment things and see how that resonates with people. I love when I ask somebody and I have a sculpture or something and I say, "Oh, what do you think?" I come up, they don't know who I am. You know, it's in a national park. They see this artwork and they're like, "Well, that shouldn't be there." And they're looking at it strangely, take a picture of it, looking left and right for like a sign. There's no sign. And I come up and I say, "Well, what do you think this is about?" And they tell me. I get this great feedback. And then we have a conversation about what I think it is and what they think it is. And it usually goes back to the box, getting out of our echo chambers, out of the box, out of our knowing what our worldview is, so that we can have these conversations, and be more real.
Well, I feel like in the 21st century, our society, from how we consume media to just how we go about our daily lives, how we go about our jobs, our hobbies, everything has gotten so fragmented, and it's kind of a good thing in a way, but if you were around, especially like the second half of the 20th century, you remember a time when there were so many more shared experiences, like people would watch the 6 o'clock news, Walker Cronkite. That's going back way far. I think I wasn't even alive. Well, maybe for a couple years of his tenure. But anyway, I digress. I I
No,
I
I think you're
remember
on
a
it. You're on it.
time.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you think that this change has contributed to why we have the kind of climate we have, and why we need people like you to get out there to skillfully create these conversations and to get people to maybe understand each other?
Yeah, I do feel like a sense of urgency, right? That these things need to be done. But then on the other hand, I'm seeing a lot of young people finding a new equilibrium with their digital worlds versus their offline world. Um, but that equilibrium needs, I think, needs to be worked on some more. The question is, how much do we spend more time on digital devices or offline interacting with people or with the environment at large off our phones? And I think that's a pretty good measure. How about we do 50-50? And that's a lot. That's a lot off a screen. I mean, can you count sleep at the same time? I wonder. If
Yeah,
we count sleep, we might get there. Is there
fair
enough
enough.
hours in the day? I mean, it's hard. We work in front of our screens and everything. So maybe it all connected. People stand up, do a little bit of exercise, move about, have interact with other senses, for example, like smell and taste, to kind of take away the objectivity of the moment and get into this other space. I like to break things up. I think it's important that we redefine ourselves several times a day uh, in order to well, in order to what? I mean, just to be to to feel alive, just to feel alive. I think that might be a very personal thing to me. Uh, I don't know what the future holds, but I hear a lot of alarming things that kind of they get me worried, from the rise of AI to political division to drone warfare to media manipulation of people by politicians, by corporations, all this stuff. um, you can it's an endless pit to look into. And I think it's a way to in a sense it almost entertains us through its catastrophes. uh, and is there anything that we can possibly do and influence those great events? And I would argue not so much. But there is something that we can do, and I found, by dumbing it down, it's just talking to one another, and make it a point at the grocery store. And maybe you look a little bit crazy, when you're doing it, um, but seize opportunities to talk to one another. When everybody's in the waiting room on their phones, I use that moment to I ask people, oh, like, I'm just curious, like, what are you looking on your phone? And they're like, well, that's kind of weird, but yeah, I'm looking. They usually either tell me or turn it off, and we're talking,
Yeah.
which I find weird. I haven't had anybody say, "Well, that's very intrusive." I think most people they want to talk to somebody else. It's just like, oh, everybody else is on their phone, so I'm going to go on my phone because there's nobody else to talk to. So somebody's got to put down their phone and talk to the other person in the waiting room. And that's kind of my invitation. I find it fun, um, but it is a bit unusual. But we can maybe recreate our culture to include that, to bring that back. I mean, it's all new. These phones are new in our culture in the big scheme of things. We've adopted them. And we're kind of cyborgs now, but uh, we at least we have the maybe we can disconnect a little bit and reconnect.
So
Yeah.
you're making me think
You can see me
about
scratching my head. I'm scratching my head.
well, you're making me
Mm,
scratch my
mm.
head, and you're
Uh,
making me think of something that I think you'd be a great person to ask this question to. So people, like, I don't know, Bill Gates, or you name some super high ranking technological entrepreneur or guru, there's a few out there who are like, well, in X amount of years, most people won't even need a job, or, just have, in theory, all this time. And there's this, like, I don't know, I hate to use the word utopia. It's not going to be a utopia, but uh, it's just going to be this world where it's like, what do, I'm not saying I think this will happen, but just the theory of, like, what the world would be like if people didn't have jobs, and just, what do people do? Do you think that a world like that would make some of these things that we have a divide on better or worse? Any other thought on that?
Right. So universal incomes, right? For receiving a universal income and not having to search for a job already exists in some countries. In a sense, it already exists in France. So I'm familiar with that, um, and it's interesting to talk to people that have just a minimum, the rent, the food, and they get these coupons to go on vacation or take the train once a year because you need to go relax away from the city or whatever. Uh, um, they some find it boring, so boring that I better go find a job. Other ones are just on video games going, my life is like this, and they're smoking weed all day, really fulfilling a stereotype. And other ones use it because they got another job on the side. People want to keep themselves occupied, um, and some people want to find purpose, other ones not. So, what is the future look of all of us in that same situation? And I would argue is as a favor to humanity, if that were to occur, we do need areas of for us to meet one another, right? Because if we're all on universal incomes, but it's a car-based society. I'm living in the Western U.S. Everybody has a car. You need to go to a grocery store. It's 20 minutes away, or 10 minutes away. It could be far. You're isolated. You're isolated. The parks are empty. There's hardly anybody at the parks. There's really not many areas for people to congregate in a public arena. They go to the mall, and that right there is a mindset. That's a box of consumption where you're allowed to do certain things, and really, if you want to sit down, you kind of have to go buy a drink. It's always got some money involved. And when I see, like in France, or in Europe in general, there's a lot more public spaces for people to congregate, and there's activities paid for with tax money, uh, for theater, outdoor plays, for hobbies, where people can meet up at community areas for them to meet and congregate. So if we come to what you were talking about, and we don't have a system for us to be able to meet one another and kind of get out of our boxes, I think it's going to suck. I don't think it's gonna be very
Fair
nice.
enough.
We need to build community areas, and we need to go to them. We probably already have some beyond the church and all that. Those are good too, but we need lots of different ones that appeal to lots of different people and get involved in it. And by the way, to me, those are also political acts about the foundation. So if we want to act with purpose, that's one thing we can do, and it fills us because we give and receive. We feel heard while we're listening. All that stuff can happen there, but it's painful because we don't know anybody there, or it kind of feels lame, or I got to work a little bit, or I got to put some hours into it, or I don't have time, or it conflicts with which TV series I'm watching. I'm gonna make a decision. I don't know.
No, that was a terrific answer, and I actually
Mm,
learned something because I didn't realize that in some territories they were already doing like that universal income system, believe it or not. So that that was a brilliant answer and educational for me, and I just on the fly felt like you were like the perfect person or a perfect person to ask that to, and I unfortunately I feel like I could talk to you all day, but we're kind of running out of time a little bit, so I'm gonna give you an opportunity now to talk about just how can people find you, how can they work with you, or just anything else that you want to share.
yes. Oh, thank you. First of all, Mark, for all of your questions and bringing it in all these different directions. Uh, I love the fact that we covered talked a little bit about universal income. I think we have so many more things that we could talk about.
Yeah.
But if people want to see what I'm doing, they can see a little bit like a video diary of my work by going on YouTube and going to Triptych dialogue. And I'm going to spell it out because it's a weird word. And that's kind of a whole show just to explain what the heck that is. But that's a TRIPTYCH, triptych. Then there's a hyphen, and then it's dialogue with a GUE at the end. And you'll see me there, and you'll be able to hear hundreds of different people answering 3 non-confrontational political questions, always the same questions. The videos will be very abstract, have nothing to do with what people are saying, so that you can concentrate more on the auditory and to listen into what people are saying. There's also some art installations, some abstract art videos, and explorations of Plato's allegory of the cave, if you want to go into some ancient philosophy and things like that. It's on there. But more importantly, go on there, write some comments, get in touch with me. And maybe I'll be coming your way. I also have these books I send out to people that have the 3 questions written in them. They're repurposed books. I recycle the books and stamp in the books questions for people to use and start conversations. Good for community centers to use as a prompt to start these conversations. I'll be glad to send you free of charge some of these books if you want.
Well, David,
So that's the deal. That's where you can find me.
well, David, I am glad that we crossed paths and did this episode. This was fantastic, and I love what you're doing. I love what your purpose is, what's driving you, and I wish you continued success and growth in uh, getting out there and trying to bridge the gap in the world. And I thank you very much for being on Mark My Words. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark, for having me on. You're a bridger too. You're making lots of bridges. Thank you for
Uh,
that.
I'm trying. I mean, again, I feel like, as I say in a lot of episodes, all of us from all different walks of entrepreneurship, we all kind of just have that common thread. And even though your end of the spectrum is pretty unconventional, we still have a lot of commonalities. And I think
Yes.
both of us are going, even though our like the things that we're doing are a bit different. I think a lot of our goals are kind of similar, and just the work ethic and everything else. And I could go on and on and on that. But we're all, it's amazing how similar we all are. And I think what you're doing is very important to like teach that kind of thing on the level that you're doing it. So keep on doing what you're doing, and thank you for being on Mark My Words.
Thank you so much. Until next time.
Until next time, that is a wrap, and I will see you all on the next episode of Mark My Words. Bye for now. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to go on a journey with me into entrepreneurship and life on Mark My Words. If you would like to learn more about me and the show, you can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Schmidt, or connect with me on Instagram at Nimrod79. Video episodes of Mark My Words, as well as other content, can also be found on the Mark My Words YouTube page. Entrepreneurship can be quite the roller coaster ride. It can be a bit isolating and intimidating, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's meet here next time at the crossroads on another episode of Mark My Words.